welcome to my virtual campfire. I'm your host, Crystal Kelly, and I'm really excited to be here today on a lunar eclipse, which is super exciting, and a day energetically to break through to new beginnings. And this leads straight into my guest, Tara Wagner, and she is a breakthrough coach and creator of Breakthrough Boss Inner Circle. I read that your motto is crush your goals, not your soul. Can
Yeah.
you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So my motto for the first half of my business years was crush your soul, not your goals. And I learned really well, no, I wouldn't say quickly. I learned really, really slowly that that's not sustainable.
Mhm.
And yeah, after that, had a lot of soul searching and a lot of learning to do to figure out a radically different way to do damn near everything I was doing before. I spent my 20s with my first business. I honestly can't tell you how I spent that time. I was working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I cannot tell you what I was doing, but it was not successful. And I think that's what, I mean, I see so many business owners doing the same thing, just hustle, 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 work, work, work. We're putting it in now. We're going to make the sacrifices now. It's all going to be worth it. Let me tell you, it's not worth it. It's never worth it.
I know my first business, well, my first official business that I started, I think I was in my early 20s, and I did the same thing. I worked maybe, I swear, some days 20 hours a day. I would be doing so much, just who knows what, like you said, just spinning wheels. And the one thing is my business did grow far larger than I ever thought it would.
Nice.
By the time I sold it, I had a very large warehouse and we had over 60 homes staged, which my background is interior design. And so, I mean, that's a lot of clients to be working with. It was far too much for me to handle.
Yeah.
And I know I had started with a business partner, and then things fell apart with that. I ended up with this business that I never thought I'd have by myself.
Mhm.
And raising a young family and working so much, I either was going to have to shut my doors or sell it.
Right.
And I was fortunate enough in 2008, which was a recession, like kind of the time we're in right now, to actually sell it. So I feel very grateful for that,
Yeah.
for that situation.
And I think what makes it complicated is the fact that there's so many different reasons a person could be burning out, right? It could be mostly mindset. Mine was mostly mindset. It was like in my head all the time, worrying about the wrong things, holding myself back from the right things, imposter syndrome. I'm young. I'm like, who am I? People are judging me, all of this stuff. Or it can be the exact opposite, right? You can have a thriving business, but the way the business is structured, the way your team is structured, the organization of your systems, like it could just be a strictly practical thing. Or sometimes all of those things are in the right place, but we're just not necessarily taking the right steps in the business, focusing on the right actions in the business. So we're spending time doing something like social media right now. Social media, everybody's like, if your business has to be on social media. Well, if you don't like social media, or, it's just maybe one way that you could build your business, but it's not necessarily the best way for you, you could be doing all the right things. You could go into it with the right mindset, but you're still going to burn out from it. So it's a very complicated, complex system. What I teach inside the Breakthrough Boss is like we go through mindset, and then we go through all the different areas of the business that might burn you out and clean up and upgrade each one of those. And then we look at your success habits. What are you doing personally? What are you doing professionally that's going to lead to success? And I think that because it's so complex, it's very difficult to, it's like that big tangled ball of lights from the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, right? He pulls that big tangled ball of lights out. It's one strand, maybe two strands, but you look at this thing and you're like, how do I unwind this? How do I fix this? Where do I even start with this? And it's, I think right now more than ever, people are more and more burnt out, in part because we were working from home for a while. We didn't have any work-life boundaries, especially if somebody was working for someone else. All of a sudden, they're working all the time. They let go of all of their habits. They stopped going places and doing things they normally were doing. And we just got inundated with bad news. It's been bad news after bad news after bad news. And we are emotionally and physically on every level just tired. We're just tired.
I know for me personally, having an established meditation practice, I think really helped me during the pandemic. And it helped me deal with my kids because I have 3 daughters and all 3 of them were at home 24/7. And my husband and I both own our own businesses. So we're also trying to work. So it's like, wow, this is a lot.
Had to radically change all of our habits because all of our needs changed, right? And I think that's something that people struggle with, is this idea that your habits and your daily routines and the things that are going to be successful for you, I call them success habits, the things that you need to be doing that are going to lead to success, are going to change based on the season of life you're in, whether or not we're in a pandemic, how old your kids are, like what are your actual needs and what are you doing? So the fact that you could adjust, I mean, obviously all of our habits went out the window. We had to recreate something entirely new. The fact that you were able to do that, you know, that's key. That's the thing that makes the difference.
It really is. I bring it back to creativity. I always think that what really makes us stand out from animals is our ability to be creative, and that creativity gives us an infinite possibility of what it is that we are,
Right.
like as beings, like what's our highest best use of our time.
Right.
So that's always something that I explore. And I think my highest best use changes from time to time.
Get stagnant and stay in the same place and hold on to the same things. That's not a sign of growth. That's a sign of shrinking. That's never well, I won't say never. It's not generally a healthy thing to do forever. There might be seasons where things look pretty much the same for a little while, but then life changes, things change, and we've got to be able to pivot with it, which is, I think it's a skill that we're losing. I think that we are getting really good at following directions, and we're getting really good at staying really comfortable and doing things that are easy. And well, I don't know if easy is the right word, but doing things that are just out of habit, like I'm going to pick up my phone and I'm going to scroll because that's what I've been doing. And I'm going to turn on Netflix and I'm still going to scroll while Netflix is playing because that's what I've been doing. And then we wonder why we're unhappy. We wonder why things aren't working anymore. We wonder why, it's that ability to stop. Even, and I will say, I don't even mean it as a skill, because sometimes it is very difficult in a person's life to find the time to pause and reflect and ask the right questions or answer the right questions, to be able to take that time and look and say, okay, what's not working here? What do I even want? Like, that is a huge question that even if you know what you want at one age, things change, and you may get to another stage in your life where you're like, I've never been here, but I don't know what I want. Having the time and the space to be able to just ask yourself those questions, think about things, let things kind of simmer and percolate and process, and be able to figure out, how do I get to pivot? What does that get to look like? And then to have the courage to do the thing. I mean, it's tricky. Like, I've got a lot of compassion for people because I know how hard it is. And I have a lifetime of doing it. I've been teaching mindset work for 12 years now, and I can still run into those things too, because it's tricky. So for somebody who doesn't have the support, this is new to them. They are, just kind of getting into personal development. Like, it's obvious why we're struggling with this type of stuff, because we're in a day and age where we need to be radically evolving faster than we know how to evolve, faster than our brains can keep up with technology and growth and society and everything.
I agree with you. We are evolving faster than we ever have in the human history that we know of our species.
Yeah.
And technology has a lot to do with it. I think of technology as innovation. I know there was a phase in my life when I kind of resisted it a little bit. I am very old school. I like to write things on paper, and I like to make things with my hands. I'm very tactile. So the idea of technology, I felt like wasn't allowing me to be creative. But then a mentor that I have is a Navajo wisdom keeper, and she told me that electricity, that we're made of electricity. Like that's what keeps our hearts beating.
Yeah.
And so electricity isn't apart from us. Technology is not apart from us. It's a part of us and a part of our creation. And once I shifted my mind in the way that, oh, technology is here to help me do the things that maybe I'm not so good at, or help me connect with more people. I love connecting with people. So I really started embracing technology at that point. And that's why I actually came up with this podcast concept. Was virtual campfire is like the spark
Yeah.
between us virtually,
Yeah.
and it's no different than sitting around a campfire and having a chat, and so once I've embraced technology, it's helped, but I'm gonna say it's still challenging.
What you're saying with technology, I would consider myself a late adopter in a lot of things, right? Like I'm slow to come to certain things, but I agree with you, like seeing it as a tool, right? A hammer can be great to build a house. It can be really bad if you hit your thumb with it. Technology can be amazing. I am talking to you from across the country right now. Like that's phenomenal. Obviously, it can be really harmful and unhelpful at the same time. And making sure that we're being really mindful of how we're using it and that it's a tool that's adding to our life and not taking from our life, I think is super important. I've had to be really mindful. Like I don't have any social media apps on my phone. I just put TikTok on my phone a couple weeks ago because I was like, sometimes you just need to kind of zone out, but I've got a timer on it because let me tell you, I could be on there for like 6 hours. It's bad when TikTok pops up and they're like, hey, you've been scrolling for a while. And I'm like, shut up.
Wow.
Tell me. So yeah, I think I use a lot of technology, but I really try to focus on the original intent of technology. Like I remember way back when it was like computers are going to save us so much time, technology is going to save us so much time. I really try to focus on those aspects of it. Like what can I automate? What can I do to make things better and easier? And being really mindful of how I'm feeling with it, because I know when I start to feel tapped out, like I just start to feel it in my body. I start to feel it in my mood. And I know I have to step away completely from it, leave the phone at home, go for a walk, go for a hike, do something to just unplug so that I can feel a sense of calm and a sense of deeper connection in my life. Because as much as I'm with you, I love the ability to connect with so many people. I have to be really mindful of shallow connections because lots of shallow connections wipe me out. Deeper connections like this, having a great conversation, those are things that are soul feeding. And so just being really careful of how I'm using things and paying attention day by day, because it will change based on how I'm feeling, what's going on in my body, what's going on in my life, what's going to help me and meet my needs right now, and what's going to actually be a bad use of that tool.
One thing that I've had to learn, because I tend to be a people pleaser and I want everyone to be happy, is to say no.
Yeah.
And that's been a little challenging for me, because I have a lot of friends, and I have things that I kind of would want to say yes to, but I know that it'll either be too many events or too many things, and I have something important the next day that I want, so I've really had to like be really, really mindful of when I say no. And it's okay to say no, because this is my mind shift that I came up with, was that it allows me more time to do the things that I truly love.
You're actually giving yourself permission to say yes to something better.
That's exactly it.
I think that is like the hugest thing, because we can focus on the worry and the doubt and the fear, or we can focus on like, actually something's even better. Like I'm saying no for a good reason. My problem is the exact opposite, Crystal. I don't have a problem saying no to other people. I have a problem saying no to myself. I have all of the ideas and I want to do all of the things, or great opportunities come along and I want to do it, but I know that I need to pace myself, or I know that it's going to burn me out, or I know that it's not the right timing. I want to say yes and I need to say no. And that is the hardest no that I get to say. Like I get to practice that all the time of like, yes, this could be great. Yes, I want to do this, but is this the right time? Am I going to feel burnt out? So my first business, I burned myself out so bad. I created a lot of the health conditions that I'm living with today. I have over 30 different health conditions that I'm living with, from autoimmune disorders to chronic illnesses to chronic injuries. And so pacing myself is turning into a lifelong lesson that I've learned really, really deeply this year, because I also ended up getting post-COVID syndrome, which post-COVID syndrome basically flares up everything that's already going on in your system. And so my whole body was just in chaos. I was in and out of bed for several months. I was just struggling. And I was like, okay, this is like, I'm going to try. I did not have a healthy mindset during the middle of this. Let me be very clear. I don't want anybody to think that everybody that goes through this stuff feels great all the time. Just because I have mindset tools doesn't mean I don't need to use them, and doesn't mean I always choose to use them. So I spent a long time being really angry and frustrated, and I want to go faster and I want to be doing these things and I don't want to slow down. And my body would not let me. Like Crystal, I was literally like covered in a head to toe rash because I was having allergic reaction to all but 10 foods. So it was like this massive, opportunity. Now I see it as this amazing thing, because life taught me, here's what you have to do. You have to not work more than a couple hours at a time. In the beginning, it was like a couple hours a week. Now I was working 25 hours before that, and I was slowly inching back up, but I was still doing too much. I was putting too much on my team. It really forced me to slow everything down. It forced me to look at all the things that we were doing that was going to lead to burnout. It forced me to take long extended breaks from social media, but it just radically changed the way that I listen to my body. And you can think you know something, right? And then you learn it and you're like, oh, that's what knowing it really means. I am so much better. I'm not going to say I'm great at it yet, but I'm so much better at hearing little tiny indications of my body that like, I need to stop. I need to say no, I need to slow down. And so it's still something that I'm learning to say no to myself. It is so hard. I'm a very when I'm feeling good, I am like, let's go for it. I'm full of ideas, high energy. Like I want to have fun. Like life is good. Complete opposite when I'm not feeling good. But when I am starting to feel good, I have to remind myself that I don't want to go backwards. I need to continue to pace myself. I can't use all the gas in my gas tank just because I finally have a full tank. Somebody told me to think of it like your phone battery, right? Like you don't plug it in when it goes dead. You plug it in before it goes dead. You plug it in like every day, regardless of where the battery's at. And that's really been my lesson of like, all right, I can't really let my battery get below 50 or 60%, because when you have an old phone and you hit that point in the battery where it goes from like 50% to 0 in 10 minutes, that's kind of like, I'm thinking of that like my body. Like if I get down to 50%, my body's going to hit 0 real fast. And so keeping myself constantly charged up and taking naps in the middle of the day, like me stopping in the middle of the day to just lay on the couch and do nothing, that's like unheard of. Like I just can't do those things.
I totally understand. Like if I do that now, but like pre-COVID, I rarely did that. Yeah. And my kids will be like, "Are you okay, Mom? Is everything okay?" I'm like, "I'm just resting my eyes. Like, just let me be."
Yeah. But it's amazing what laying on the couch for an hour in the middle of the day will do for you. I can go from, I am so exhausted, I need to like fall asleep, I don't think I can keep going. And before, I live with chronic illnesses, like you push through that. I got to get stuff done. I got to do what I got to do. And I would push through it. Now I'm like, okay, but I can come back and do those things later, right? I'm just going to lay down. I'm just going to like read a book. I'll scroll on TikTok, right? Like I'll do little things, and just laying down before I crash, I end up getting up from that couch feeling like I just got up in the morning. And it's such a like mind-blowing concept to me that it's still super exciting when I do it. Cause I'm like, wow, that worked. Like I'm constantly thinking, I just need to, that sleep is what recharges you. No, like actually just rest. There's a difference between sleep and rest and rejuvenation. And yeah, it's been a mind-blowing concept for sure. But that, like we were saying, like my biggest thing is still just saying no to myself when I want to say yes. Or if I say yes, it's a very mindful yes. Like we're going to Texas this weekend because I got an opportunity to connect with some people that are way smarter than me. And I'm like, this is a fantastic opportunity. What do I need to do to make sure that I have food that's going to nourish my body? When is the ideal flight for me so that I can make sure that I've got time to rest? I don't want to fly out the next day. I want to be able to pace myself. I don't want to be rushed. Like I'm a much more mindful planner because my first priority is my body needs to feel good. My mind needs to feel good. If that happens, everything else goes better. I'm more productive. I can get more done in 3 hours than I used to get done in 8. It also helps that I'm not wasting time on stupid stuff that doesn't need to be done anymore. But it was such a habit to learn that process of really listening and prioritizing myself. I thought I prioritized myself because I had a morning routine and an evening routine. But it was throughout the day that I was just ignoring signals that tell you, lay down, eat something, keep some nuts by your computer, little things like that to ensure that my body and my health stay number one.
Our bodies really are a barometer. There's so many things, subtleties that exist in our lives that aren't always outwardly spoken, like pressures from even like today is a lunar eclipse. So the pressures that happen and other dimensions and things, we feel that in our bodies. And if we ignore those things and we just stay focused on that really 3D or 4D task that you're trying to get done, you're ignoring all this other stuff. And our vessels are only as good at, as they're going to be. And so caring for them and taking those pauses. I try to tell people that meditation doesn't have to be sitting, straight up and cross-legged, and that doesn't have to be your meditation. It's to recharge and to have that moment of space where your mind can just be aimless or focus on whatever it needs to just do to rest. And so, laying on the couch, that 100% is a form of meditation. Taking a walk, even petting your pet, your dog or your cat, or something like that, is just listening to music. A lot of times that can help. Everyone's different.
I've been having that conversation with so many people the last couple of weeks because they're like, my routines aren't working. How can I get myself to stay on my routines? I'm like, change your routine. Do something that you want to do, not something that you have to do. Question the suppositions in your mind that say, it has to look this way. Like if I'm going to be a healthy, whole person, I should be meditating cross-legged on the floor, like you said, for 30 minutes. And I should be doing this and I should be doing that. No, like the purpose of the meditation is not to sit cross-legged on the floor. The purpose of the meditation is to get beyond your mind and stop believing everything you think. So what other ways help you to do that? Like the goal is to meet the needs, not to do the thing. And I think that I went from hating routines and structure and like, I'm a free spirit, don't tie me down. Like, I just want to be like, I want freedom. That's one of my greatest values. And then I started noticing probably about 5 or 6 years ago, the greatest thief of my freedom was the chaos in my life because I didn't have any routines. And so I went into this very structured time in my life. It was a couple years of being very structured, and it was a great season of my life. I enjoyed it. And then I got to a point where it's like, I was on one side of the extreme with no routines. And you're going to swing to the other side with lots of routines. And then I realized that those were just becoming more tasks that I had to check off. And now I'm in this season of life, and I've probably been here for about a year and a half now, where it's like I have a list of things that I can do that I know meet certain needs, and I have them categorized because I don't like to try to think in the morning. And I wake up and I just say, what do I want to do this morning? Like, what's my body needing? And I check in and I do what I can, and I look at those lists and I'm like, you know what, that sounds good today, or this sounds fun today, or this sounds relaxing today. Yesterday morning, I got up and I took a bath. So why?
Lovely.
It's like, you know what, I'm just going to take a bath today because I had a call that I wanted to be on, or that I needed to like listen in on. And that call usually kind of makes me tired. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to like nurture my body while I'm doing it instead. That's not something that I would say most people should add to their routine. Like a leisurely bath right before work is usually not going to be the most motivating thing. But when you're just listening to your body and checking in and questioning the things in your mind that say it should look a certain way, if you have rules in your head of how it should look, you're paying attention to somebody else's routine. You're not paying attention to your body. What's your body needing? What's your mind needing? And experiment until you find the things that are going to actually feel good, because that's the point.
Yeah. Like you said, you took a bath before a meeting. That doesn't seem like the right time to do it, but
Right.
for you, you felt it and you did it. And that's wonderful because and it's hard because our society is structured on time. Like we had to set a time that you and I would talk.
Exactly.
And so it's, we have those constraints, but I know for myself, when I release that time, I try to schedule one thing in my day that I have to have done at a particular time. So if I put too many times, where I have to be somewhere at an exact time. And sometimes I'll even schedule meetings, not a Zoom call, but an in-person meeting where it's like, I'll text you on my way, or, something like that, where it releases that stress of time, because time stresses me out.
It's really common too, for those of us who have gone through burnout, is like, we need to let go of the pressure, right? Like the pressure for me would always show up as physical pressure. I always felt like there was a hand on my back, like pushing me forward, like rush, 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 rush. Letting go of that, I think is oftentimes really helpful and really important for people that have gone through burnout. It's also, like you said, one of the hardest things to do. And I think what's challenging is that if somebody's in a situation where that's just not realistic, they can't do that, right? Maybe they're a single parent and they still have to work and they're burnt out. I always will tell them, what can you do? Like, what are some of the ways that you can let go of the schedule a little bit? Is there a way that you can rework your work schedule? Like, can you negotiate different hours, or can you negotiate 4/10s so that you have 3 days off? Or like, what are the possibilities to give yourself that space? And then anything that you can let go of, right? Like maybe you can't let go of a 9 to 5, or maybe you have a business and you do need to run it. What can you let go of? Like, yes, it may have a small consequence, but probably not as big of a consequence as you think, because there's always this point where we think something can't be done, it can't be done, it can't be done, until life forces us, right? Like I had post-COVID, I had no option but to let go of some of the things that I thought could not be let go of. And that has always been the case. Over and over and over in my life, things would happen, or something would force me to make a decision that I swore I couldn't make. But when I had no other option, I made it happen. And so I like to try to encourage that in people. Like, pretend that this was an emergency situation. Pretend that something drastic happened and you had to let go of it, even though there might be some fallout, even if you had to do something different to make it work. What would that then look like? Because the thing with burnout is, if you don't give yourself the ability, some ability, doesn't have to be perfect, but if you don't do what is possible to allow yourself to rest, your gas tank's always going to be empty. Like, you need so much more to fill up that tank, because now it's like we have a tank with holes in it, right? Like, we're constantly putting gas in. And if you're not pulling off to the side of the road every once in a while, as often as possible, you're going to, drain yourself even faster. And it can be a really vicious catch-22 for some people if they don't have the freedom to make those changes. But it is one of the most important things we can do, is just recognize that our physical body Like I'm a very kind of like emotional, cerebral person. I do mindset work, like that's kind of my personality. It is very easy for me to just stay in my thoughts and my emotions and my heart center, like how am I feeling, all those things, but not checking in with the physical body. How's my body feeling? What is my body needing on a cellular level? Because burnout is not just a matter of like, I'm tired of doing this. It's literally your cells are tired. Your cells are running on empty. So doing what you can do to make sure that you're feeding yourself, your physical body, in whatever way that gets to look like, even if it's not perfect. And if you can make some drastic changes, I mean, I've known people that were like, sell my business, sell my house, downsize, go and get a part-time job, that just pays the bill, that's mindless, just so that I can heal myself from this burnout. And hopefully it never gets to that case for anybody listening. But sometimes we have to just look at, what are some big actions we can take to make sure we're taking care of ourselves in the way we need to.
I at the very peak of my burnout, when I knew I had to sell my business, I ended up in the hospital with a 106-degree temperature. I had a brain and spinal cord infection. It was just a virus. My daughter had brought home a stomach virus, but it mutated in my body because I was so worn down. So like I didn't have anything left to fight this little tiny virus, and it attacked my body. And I remember waking up. I don't even remember getting to the hospital. I remember waking up and all the doctors were in hazmat suits and the nurses, everyone. I was like, what, where am I? What is going on? And it was because they didn't know what I had. And I think at the end of the day, I mean, it really launched me into a healing journey. And it probably was the best thing that ever happened to me. But at the end of the day, it probably was just something really small that grew really big, really fast in me because I didn't have my immune system that I should have had because I was so worn out and burned out, like literally burned out. I still had so much more to do in this lifetime. But I was focusing on all the wrong things. And so, a healing journey like that is, it's been a long time. That was like 2007. I think I got that virus. And by 2008, I was able to sell my business. But, I took 3 years off after that. And I would always tell people I'm on my sabbatical.
So similar, Crystal. So in 2007, I had a mobile massage company. So multiple therapists going all over the place, closed that down, went to just a private practice for a year, still was like, I just physically can't do this. So in 2008, closed everything, was just done. Spent a good 2 or 3 years licking my wounds, doing some emotional growth, healing, mindset work, going through all of that. And then and my husband was still working at that point. He was facing a layoff because of the recession. He was in construction at the time. And we ended up, we lost our house because we couldn't make the payments on it. We took the little bit of money we had and bought a 1981 Winnebago, maybe 82 Winnebago. I think it was an 82 Winnebago, 22 feet long. Sold all of our stuff, packed up this Winnebago, and just decided to travel. And, slowly, like I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I was raised by an entrepreneur, got back into business again. Same thing, almost burnt out again, and had to just really like stop and assess and relearn and like shift things. And, that's where I finally, like I was doing mindset work until, mindset coaching until about 2017, and then realized like, I really want to be doing mindset coaching with entrepreneurs. Like I love small business. I think small business is the vehicle for the change that we need in the world, because small business owners have to be connected to people. They have to stay connected to their community. They give back. Like there's just so much potential there. And very quickly realized that burnout was the thing that, like, that's the thing that is at the heart of so many of our challenges as business owners, and why so many people don't end up having successful businesses or what they feel like is successful. It might make a lot of money, it might be really busy, but they're not fulfilled because they're tired, because their thoughts are going in one direction, their feet are going in another direction, and they're just we're spread too thin. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, same thing. And I always tell people it's cyclical. Whatever your life lessons are, and there's generally more than one, it's like the spiral, right? Like it feels like you're coming back around to the same topic, but you're coming to a higher piece of that. Like you're seeing it from a different perspective. You're peeling back more.
Exactly.
Okay. And I don't know when that stops.
I don't think it does, because I believe that even our soul's journey, it continues to come around, and we do learn similar lessons over and over. But like you said, you're seeing it from a different perspective,
Yeah.
and you're healing different parts of yourself that you need to heal to get to that next level. And that's where maybe, that is a leveling up of sorts, where you're it's the evolution that we're talking about, and it's what we as humans need to learn how to do, is to always shift, and our only constant is change. So there's that.
It makes me wonder though, how much of that is cultural, because if you always look leading up to a session, there's always a boom, right? People are working really hard, lots of things are happening, and then we start to burn out. And how much of that is linked to the recession? Or is it just that the recession gives us the time to slow down, reevaluate, reassess, make some changes so that we can kind of start fresh again in that new cycle of growth that comes shortly after?
And I think that comes down to the creativity too, because I think people like you and I probably move a little more, you know, we move on from, we're not afraid to have the change.
Right.
Trying new things, it's hard to try new things. It's hard to learn because we go back to making mistakes.
Right.
And when we're learning, it's, you have to stumble through things. And I don't know, but all I know is each time I'm getting better and better.
Right.
And that's the only thing I hold myself up to, is like, how can I be better at this today than I was yesterday?
Yeah.
And it might not be the best. Like, I'm sure there's lots of people that do it way, way better, but at least I'm getting a little better every time, or I'm learning something new, or connecting with somebody that, clearly we have a lot to learn from each other, and to share with other people as well.
Yeah. I think too, one of the things that, because I really respect people who are comfortable. They don't have that constant desire to change, because I'm like, man, that's got to be really peaceful sometimes. So I really respect that. But I think it goes back to what we were saying before, where technology in the world is changing so fast right now, that people who value those things and who are comfortable, who aren't just in a comfort zone, but really do like things the way they are and things have been good for them, are now facing change that maybe they weren't prepared to face, or don't want to face. And I have a lot of compassion for that, because we are in a time of everything is changing. There's not much that is staying the same, and it's changing faster and faster and faster. I think primarily because ideas can spread faster than they've ever been able to spread before. And it's an upheaval, and it's exhausting. And when you're dealing with that at the same time of being confronting all of your own stuff, or being confronted by things going on in the world, and it's just all so much, it's a lot. I have a lot of compassion for people who don't love change. I love change. I thrive usually on change. My body is a little bit like, meh, do we? But generally speaking, I prefer it. But I just have a lot of compassion, because it's a lot for somebody whose value and whose gift to the world is stability. We're not living in a very stable world. Have you heard that saying? They say it's a curse. May you live in interesting times. They say it's actually a curse. And when you think about it, it's like, oh yeah, we are living in interesting times right now.
Oh yeah, we are, for sure.
Crazy interesting times. And I just hope that I get to see some of it in my lifetime, like come to fruition, and see where it's heading, because it's crazy.
Yeah. I think things are evolving so quickly that we are going to see major changes in our lifetime. I remember talking to my grandpa when he was about 94, and he said, he was telling me the things that were different, when he was a kid. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of change, like thinking from your earliest conscious memory all the way to like, what he was there.
Yeah,
And this was probably the 90s,
yeah,
late 90s. And and he was one of my favorite people that I have ever encountered. He was very much at peace, and he was really a wise person.
yeah,
And he never let the change bug him. He just would kind of reinvent himself. He was like a fisherman, and then
yeah.
he was always doing something different throughout his life. And even towards the end of his life, he had some really unfortunate things happen financially. And he just it didn't he said, I want to paint. I want to, and it was okay. And he was happy that he had his health and his family around him. And I always thought that was so cool, like, wow, like a lot of people would be really upset over some of these things, and you're just going with it. And so I think that was a big influence on me as a child.
I think there's so much value there too, because I look at that generation, like anyone born, my grandma lived to be almost 100 years old. So she was born in 1914. Yeah, 1914. And I would always just look at her mindset and her generation. And she was so independent, but not detached, right? Like she was like a Rosie the Riveter. She was like one of the first women to get a divorce. Like she wore pants when all of the neighbors shamed her for wearing pants. But I think that there's something about the generation that they grew up in where there was a lot of self-sufficiency, but there was still a lot of connection. There was a lot of upheaval. So you had to be resourceful. Like you had to really you're going through World War I and World War II, and there's all of these like rations and things like that where you don't have everything you need and you get to be resourceful. And sometimes I wonder if we've lost that a little bit, and that's maybe making it more difficult for us to kind of evolve and grow and all of that, because we're not used to being resourceful. We're used to instant gratification. We're used to things being accessible. We're not used to this. I mean, think about during the pandemic and the aisles of the grocery store being empty. We've never seen that in our life. Like that's a radical thing that we're now facing. And I don't know. I just think it's so fascinating how humans tick and what influences us and different personalities and how they handle different things. And yeah, I don't know where I'm going with any of this, but I find it really, really interesting.
It's fascinating to
Yeah,
me.
interesting times.
It is interesting times, and I know they're hard. And I'm the same way as you. I have so much compassion for people who have a hard time with change. But I think these changes, these pressures, and the cyclical things, the global resources, those sorts of things, we need to feel that lack, because that is what our planet is feeling.
Yeah.
Our planet's tired. Mother Earth has been just used and used and used and used. Like you said, you have to have your battery plugged in at 50%, and we're depleting our natural resources at a much faster rate than that. And so it is time for us as humans to plug our energy back in, because we are energy too. And we can provide energy back to our planet, and some love and care, whether it's a garden in your front yard, if you live in the city, or even if you have a balcony, make a garden, whatever it is, whatever way you give back to the planet, it's what is needed right now.
Have you heard that quote that says, hard times create strong people create good times create weak people, weak people create hard times.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like that's the cycle. If you look at the cycles, and I've seen people talk about this and show these cycles, I kind of feel like that's where we're at. We're at this place of like, we've had it really good for a long time. Things are starting to get messy. Things are starting to get messed up. And it's freaking us out because we're so used to things being easy and being accessible and having whatever we want. And now we're going to get to learn to be strong people. And, you know, what does that get to look like? And what are the changes? And yeah, it has growing pains, and yeah, we're not all going to love it.
Like you said, any amount that we can help others who are struggling is what we need to do. And then if we can't, then we need to really help ourselves first, because I think that is the number one thing at the end of the day is taking care of yourself.
Yeah. Well, you have to be the person who can inspire anybody else. And if you are like we have a saying when my son was little, inspire, not require. We don't want to force him to do something. We want him to want to do the right thing. And so what are the ways that we can inspire, not require? And that required us to be better parents. It forced us to work on ourselves and grow and be the person who could inspire the, you know, healthy choices. And I think about that same thing all the time. I'm like, you know what? The adults that don't want to change, the adults that are digging their heels in, the adults that are wanting to go backwards, right? They're just giant kids. We're all just giant kids.
We're all giant kids.
What if we just treated them with the same compassion as a young kid who was having a hard time with the transition? And, you know, we connected with them, and we just, instead of forcing them, instead of requiring it, we did the work on ourselves that allowed us to show up and help that person to do the work on themselves. And I think that this is a lot of work, which I think is why most of us, we don't do a very good job at it, because it's a lot of work. There's a lot of people out there that need to have some real conversations with some people, and that they need a lot of compassion in order to change and grow and see a good way forward that's still going to meet their needs, because they're only holding on to old beliefs because that's the only way they know to meet their needs. We only do things in an attempt to meet our needs. Every behavior, even the unhealthy ones, are an attempt to meet our needs. And I think the only good and sustainable way that we actually change people who are not ready to change is through connection, is by really connecting to them, hearing them, understanding what their needs are, and then helping them in any way we can to still get their needs met in the environment that's changing around them. Because they're, you know, if you're facing fear, of course you're going to dig your heels in. Of course you're going to hold on to the past. Of course you're going to hold on to things that aren't working anymore, or even things that are hurting other people, if that's the only thing you've learned to be able to meet your own needs. So, you know, I mean, it is a lot of emotional work, but I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do as individuals, is make sure that we're in the healthiest place possible to be able to show up with kindness and compassion to the people who need support, and seeing them as a person that needs support, not as the enemy, because they're not the enemy. They're just big kids that are struggling, like we all are.
Exactly. We all are. And I think, yeah, it's a great way to end our conversation. I think you summed it up perfectly.
No, this was great. Thank you so much for having me. I love having these kind of conversations. I think they're super important to have. And I just hope anybody hearing it really looks for their takeaways, because there's so many things that we can feel like we need to do or we should do, but there's only so much that you can do. And so just looking for, like, what's the number one thing that I'm hearing from all these conversations? What's the number one thing that I am taking away? And then what can I actually do to put that into place to make sure that that is something that sticks for me? I think that's probably the most important thing. Thank you so much.
I'm so excited that we connected.
And by the way, I was looking at your email that you were just in Austin, and I'm going to Austin this weekend. So literally, like, our shit is so aligned, it's weird.
Crazy. I love it. Well, you're soul sister then.
Yep. I had dreads in my hair back in the day. The whole
Did you?
yards. Yeah.
Yep. See, we're just you know, we're here to help guide. That's what we're doing. If you want to know more about Tara and the work she does to help entrepreneurs upgrade themselves and their business for more time, freedom, and zero burnout, be sure to grab her free Reversing Small Business Burnout checklist at exoterra.us.